Hey everyone, I'm Rodrigo Andrade and this is FNC Smart Talks. Today we're going to talk about data security. Brazil is already the 50th country in number of ransomware attacks. So this is a very important subject. And to discuss that, it's with me today, Kurtis Minder, CEO at GroupSense, and also, by the way, a fascinating job, a ransomware negotiator. Kurtis, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Rodrigo.
We recently had a ransomware attack in one of the biggest Brazilian retail companies. And this case showed us that many people don't know what happened. It didn't even know what is a ransomware attack. So my first question is a little bit conceptual. How can you explain to these people what is a ransomware attack?
Sure. So typically what happens in a ransomware attack is the victim, the company that's being targeted, they'll show up to their office one morning, and all of the systems that they use, their computers, their desktops, their servers, will be locked. They won't be able to use them. The threat actors, the bad guys that are attacking them, are typically using encryption software to lock the files on those systems, and then asking the victim organization to pay them to unlock the files. The other thing that typically occurs is before the bad guy or the threat actor locks the files, they take a copy of as much of the data as they can. So not only have they locked your files, but they have a copy of your critical data, which they threaten to leak or to sell to other bad guys or other threat actors if you do not pay them.
Okay, great, thank you. And many small companies think they will never be victims of this kind of crime. Is this true? Is usual, it's common this crime happen with an individual, for example, or a small company?
Sure. Yeah, I think the attacks that we hear about in the media are often the very large companies. However, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of small businesses that get hit every day that we don't hear about. They're small profile. They often don't report it to law enforcement or to security operations. So we just don't hear about those attacks. So the answer is yes, they are a target and they do get hit with growing frequency.
Great, it's so important. And in addition, as I explained in the beginning of our conversation, in addition of your job as CEO at GroupSense, you are now a recognized ransomware negotiator, a profession that didn't even exist a few years ago. Was the COVID pandemic determinant to increase the number of cases, or do you think that it was already growing even before the pandemic?
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand that ransomware has been around. Some of the earliest ransomware attacks happened even in the late 1980s. So there have been versions of this type of attack going back decades. What has increased the frequency and the amount of the attacks is there's a couple things. One, cryptocurrency. In the past, the threat actors would have to receive payment via like gift cards or something similar. This made it very hard to transact smaller amounts, et cetera. With the proliferation of the anonymity that cryptocurrency affords and the proliferation of those platforms, it makes it very easy for them to execute an attack and execute a payment anonymously with large amounts of money. So that's definitely impacted the increase in the number of attacks, but also the sophistication required to execute attack has gone down. So basically, the threat actors that are perpetrating these attacks, the bad guys that are behind these attacks, are using tools that are pre-made. That they don't have to be hackers themselves. They can just buy network access, stolen network access from someone, and they can license the use of a ransomware platform, and that's it. It's as simple as hitting the buy button on eBay sometimes, right? And then finally, yes, to your point, COVID did accelerate the number of attacks, primarily because during the COVID time frame, a lot of folks moved to a work from home model. And as part of that remote work model, the IT department opened up remote access into network systems. And they didn't secure those properly in a lot of cases. So if you look at the number of attacks that are currently occurring, about 70% of them are just very simplistic remote access attacks.
Great. You told something so important that I didn't know about that. So the bad guy, as you say, they don't need to be hackers. They can use tools available on the internet to be able to attack someone.
Yep, exactly. So then there's two pieces to that. One is there's a concept called the initial access broker. The initial access broker is a hacker that breaks into networks, but they do not steal data and they do not execute ransomware. All they do is they sell that access to someone who wants to do those things. So you can go on, there are underground marketplaces on the dark net and dark web that you can go on and buy access from an initial access broker to a network. And then you can go to another marketplace and buy what they call ransomware as a service platform to execute a ransomware attack on the network you just bought access to. And that requires only a small amount of capital and very little technical know-how to do.
Man, fantastic. And now, what should I do if I have already been attacked and my data is already with a cyber criminal or a bad guy, as you say? How can I deal with this kind of people?
Well, you may not want to. And so the first thing I'll say is what you should not do. Do not attempt to contact the threat actors yourself. And I'll tell you why in a second. Do not just shut down your systems to keep them out, because a lot of times the software the threat actors use to infect your systems can get corrupted if you shut down the systems. So a lot of people make that mistake. So do not do that. What I would suggest you do immediately is contact an incident response professional that specializes in breach response. That could be a law firm. That also could be an IT practice that specializes in this. And before you decide to engage with a threat actor in a ransom, you should have someone like me or a professional ransomware operator come in. And what we typically do is we will discuss the impact of your business. How much does it cost you to be out of operation? What is it worth to keep your data from being dumped on the internet that has some value to it? And then we will provide you with the information about the threat actor. So here's who we're dealing with. Here's what they typically ask for from a ransom. Here's what they typically settle at, because they don't always, you never pay the original price, right? And do they honor the ransom? Do they actually decrypt the files when you pay? And so we'll give you all of this information. And what the goal is to give the victim enough information or as much information as we can so that you can make a business decision on whether you want to pursue this at all. If you decide to do that, then we would act, the ransomware negotiators would act as the liaison between you and the threat actor. We also work on compliance components. So countries have laws about who you can and cannot send money to. You have to be very careful about that. And we help with that. And we will actually also help with the facilitation of the payment when possible, the crypto payment.
Fascinating, Kurtis. And finally, how can we be safe? How can we prevent from ransomware attacks? If there is any way, I don't know. How can we be safe from that?
There is. I mean, I guess the good and the bad news, Rodrigo, is that we've done so many of these cases, and we always take inventory of how the threat actors gained access to begin with. And there's a small list of common attacks that the threat actors are using they're not sophisticated attacks. They're very simplistic. I mentioned one of them already, which is remote access. So securing remote desktop protocol, using multi-factor authentication on your VPN and remote access devices, will mitigate 70% of the risk. Those two things alone. And then the next thing is credential use inside your organization. Employees should not be allowed to use their corporate credentials outside the corporate environment. What often happens in these attacks is the bad guys will get a user inside your network will use the credentials on a third-party site. That third-party site gets hacked. The credentials are then dumped on the dark web. The bad guy will use those credentials then and log into your network. And so just having a policy, around password use and credential use inside your organization would be a critical step. Obviously, there's some obvious ones like patch your systems, use endpoint security controls. Those things will further mitigate it. But if you do those first few things, it really, really reduces the risk and the likelihood of you being attacked successfully.
Great. Kurtis, thank you so much for your participation. This subject is in evidence here in Brazil, and I'm sure that this conversation will help many people that are looking for more information about the ransomware attacks. So thank you so much for being here.
Happy to help. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
If you like this conversation, share on your social media and follow FNC channel on YouTube. For more information, here are our contacts. Bye-bye. See you.